Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Happy holidays. Hopefully you're still in the giving spirit. As I record this video, we're sitting at 8,876 subscribers. We got a goal of getting to 10,000, but I kindly ask that you just drop and subscribe. All my new viewers, check us out, and all the guys who are returning, like this video. Get us into the algorithm. Trying to hit that 9K goal before we head into the new year, but we got a lot of good football today. And I think that we saw probably one of the better days when we talk about the full slate of games. All of these games were good to me, but I'm going to start off with the one that I just finished watching. That's the Ravens versus the 49ers. Now, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens dominate the 49ers 33-19. The Ravens moved to 12-3, and this was a matchup that everyone coined as the potential Super Bowl preview. Now, these two teams, we know it as well. They actually met up in the Super Bowl a few years back, but to see them face off in the regular season, two teams who are at their peak. We talk about the NFC, competitive teams in the NFC. We look at San Francisco, the AFC. Who's the best team in the AFC? We go to Baltimore and talk about that. Lamar Jackson on the day, 23 of 35, 252 yards and 2 touchdowns. Added in 7 carries and 45 yards. Now, we're going to have this conversation. It's talking about the MVP award. When Lamar Jackson plays football the way he played in this game tonight, and then you have Brock Purdy, who went 18 of 32, 254 yards, had 4 interceptions, and exited the game early in the fourth quarter with an injury. Sam Darnold stepped in. He did some things on the football field. Actually had a touchdown. Sam Darnold making an appearance. But I think when we talk about the biggest takeaway for this game, forget the box scores, forget everything you see on this. We're going to talk about Lamar Jackson and how valuable he was to this team. Now, there's something else I want to talk about with the Baltimore Ravens, but I think that's the first thing I look at. Christian McCaffrey, he added in 14 carries and 103 yards and a touchdown for San Francisco, but the 49ers had 10 penalties for 102 yards. Sloppy football on the day, turning over the football. Now, all of those interceptions weren't on Brock Purdy. Had some tip passes, but I think when we look at it, for the most part, Brock Purdy got off of his spot. The Baltimore Ravens did a great job of getting him off of his rhythm. This is an offense where we talk about timing, using the motion. For 1, 2, 3, boom, where's our read? Where can we get the football off of? And I think for Brock Purdy, he couldn't be that point guard tonight. They forced him into a situation where you're just going to have to trust it. You're going to have to throw this football quicker than you usually do. You can't trust your offensive line like you usually do. George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk made some big-time plays, but it was kind of that situation where it's a little bit too little too late. Now, with this one, Lamar Jackson moves to 20-1 versus NFC opponents. Exceptional record. And now, getting back to what I say, what is the biggest takeaway from this game? Lamar Jackson for me. Now, I want to acknowledge some of these guys, Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey. All of these guys deservedly so. But I think for me, after watching the game tonight and coming into this game, it was kind of that Brock Purdy versus Lamar Jackson MVP conversation. That's what the question was for me. But coming out of this one, Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, whoever you want to throw in there, I respect all of those guys and I respect the candidates. But I think for me, those guys are competing to be second to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson in this game showed us everything. Now, I really want to talk about one player, was Chase Young. He beat the left tackle. He was breathing down the back of Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson ducks it, flushes out of the pocket, gets a big-time gain, hits Nelson Aguilar. We can go to another play. Lamar Jackson flushing out of the pocket, getting a 30-yard gain on the ground. These types of things we consistently saw from Lamar Jackson. All night, it seemed like the San Francisco 49ers, we know what the pass rush is in San Francisco. That's what they breathe off of defensively. And they were getting there, but they weren't getting Lamar Jackson to the ground. Either he was breaking out of a sack or he was just evading within the pocket. We saw accuracy. We saw consistency. We saw a receiving core who stepped up. Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers, Nelson Aguilar, Odell Beckham, all of those guys, and Lamar Jackson elevating his talent. If we're going to cut on the film, look at everybody we want to talk about for this MVP race, I can't look at Lamar Jackson's film. I can't look at his statistics, especially what he did tonight. And we talk about MVP, it's about moments. Tonight, Lamar Jackson had a moment. I think that was my biggest takeaway. And also, we go to the defensive side of the ball for this thing. Now, I know we talk about Ben Johnson. We're even seeing Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Bobby Slowick, offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. We're seeing a lot of different guys, even Eric Bieniemy, but Mike McDonald, that's a name. If your team's looking for a head coach, Mike Macdonald is a name you need to get extremely familiar with. The defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I know we look at Harbaugh, what he is as a leader, what he is as a defensive mind. But Mike Macdonald, now we talk about how they flustered. We talk about how they flustered Brock Purdy. And the first thing you look at is we're stunting this defensive line. We're moving this defensive line. We're blitzing these guys like Stevens, like Kyle Hamilton, like all of the guys that we have, even Patrick Queen getting after it, getting after Brock Purdy consistently. That's Mike Macdonald, and that's a credit to him. When I talk about going against these top-tier offenses, we've seen him do this. I mean, I go back to that Detroit Lions game, and I think it was a game that really stapled what Mike Macdonald is for me. Now, this is a guy that came from the Michigan tree, then came over to Baltimore, but I'm thinking about the Baltimore Ravens. I love everything they do defensively. When I think Baltimore Ravens, I think defense. But for the talent they have, now we think about the emergence of a Justin Matabuke. We think about the re-emergence of Jadeveon Clowney, Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen. We talk about Stevens, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, all of those guys. But I don't think that you would have thought that in today's NFL you could have an elite defense like this. We're seeing an elite defense, and I'm seeing it against elite offenses. Detroit Lions, San Francisco 49ers. Now, they had a shootout with the Rams, but I'm going to some of these games, and we're seeing a consistent theme in some of these big-time games. When you have to stop a team, when you need it the most, this is a defense that's getting those stops. Shout out to Mike Macdonald and what they did. My biggest takeaway from this one was Lamar Jackson's excellence. He rises in my MVP rankings and my MVP vote. He gets it after tonight's game. Now, I want to head into the next game because I think it was a very interesting one as well. This is the Las Vegas Raiders stunning the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Day. Who would ever thought the Grinch stole Christmas? We're going to talk about a little bit about a celebration that happened in this game where the Grinch actually stole Christmas. But the Las Vegas Raiders pick up a 20-14 win. Antonio Pierce moves to 4-3 as a head coach after taking over for Josh McDaniels back on October 31st after they had the loss to the Detroit Lions. Aiden O'Connell won the day. Now, you probably thought if you beat the Kansas City Chiefs from past years, you probably thought it was scoring a lot of points. This wasn't that type of game at all. It was a nasty game. It was an Antonio Pierce game. When he was a football player, when he played for some of those different teams, he was a defensive-minded guy. Bringing that over to this team. I just love how they're playing with him as the interim head coach. Hopefully he gets a shot at this thing. We're going to talk a little more about that. But Aiden O'Connell, 9 for 21, 62 passing yards. That's all you got. Now, it's nowhere I can go look and find passing yards from Aiden O'Connell. This is what you have, and that's what he was on the day. 9 of 21, 62 passing yards. They still won the football game. Zamir White, running back out of Georgia, very highly touted recruit. I remember him coming out and going to the University of Georgia. Slipped in the draft process a little bit, but today he got his shine. No Josh Jacobs. He had 22 carries, 145 yards. Shout out Zamir White on the day. Malcolm Kuntz, another guy who showed out defensively, 3 sacks. But you know what I want to talk about when I just say the Grinch stole Christmas? Jack Jones having a big time day. Had the pick six on Patrick Mahomes. And I believe it was a route to the left side of the football field. And I think actually somebody stumbled. No, actually it was a route to the right side of the football field. And Jack Jones just read it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how teams are looking at the Kansas City Chiefs. Because the way Jack Jones sat on that route, they're not threatened by getting beat deep. We see this, and I think we're consistently seeing it, whether it's man coverage or zone coverage. We saw Jack Jones. Now, we had a stop route on the numbers to the right side of the football field. Patrick Mahomes, he's not really off rhythm and timing with it, but Jack Jones understanding. That's film study. That's understanding that the guy that you're guarding cannot get behind you. Breaks on the thing as soon as Patrick Mahomes releases the football. Then, after he gets the pick six, he goes up into the crowd. Now, as a fan, how do you really feel about that? I'm thinking that I'm coming to a game. I'm a child, whatever, grown adult, child, whatever you are. I'm coming to the game. I'm thinking I'm about to get this football from a man who just scored a touchdown, takes it away from me. Now, hey, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I think that it kind of adds into the rivalry, kind of some of the suspense when we talk about Christmas. The Grinch stole Christmas, Jack Jones taking back the football. I like that a little bit. Show some nastiness versus the Kansas City Chiefs, but that was another play. Now, the Raiders went 0 of 3 in the red zone and 3 of 12 on third down. They only scored 6 offensive points and still won this football game 20-14. Now, adding to that, they lost time of possession to Kansas City 34 of 26. And the reason I want to talk about this is because the Kansas City Chiefs are so frustrating to me. And they're biting themselves in the foot consistently. When we talk about the biggest takeaway from this game, I think that's what it is. A team that's consistently harming themselves, shooting themselves in the foot, and not capitalizing on what they have on the opposite side of the ball defensively. I think this is the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has played with during the entirety of his career in Kansas City. But they're not executing offensively to a point where they can really capitalize on that and put points on the board. Keep our defense fresh. Let those guys go hunt. I think about George Karlaftis. I think about Charles Omenihu, Chris Jones, one of the top 3 defensive tackles in football. You look at some of those guys, Trent McDuff, L'Jarius Sneed, but they can't capitalize on that because the offense is not coming to the table. Now, Patrick Mahomes, he went 27 to 44, 235 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Adding to that, which is very ugly, he was the leading rusher for the Kansas City Chiefs on the day. Now, it wasn't Isaiah Pacheco. It wasn't Clyde Edwards-Helaire. 10 carries, 53 yards for Patrick Mahomes. A lot of scramble yards. We know he's not really a design runner. The combination of Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 15 carries, 32 yards, 1 touchdown. What am I going to get out of that? And I don't know if it's more so credited to the actual running backs themselves like Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I think kind of getting out of the run game in a situation where it's not working and you're not staying consistent with it. Now, I think the underrated part about this, the Las Vegas Raiders are actually a good defense. You look at some of the things offensively. Aiden O'Connell, is he a franchise guy? I think he's not their franchise guy, but a lot of things, they haven't been an explosive offense. And you say, how are they staying competitive? This is a football team who's actually, I want to double check this. This is the football team who, after this win today, they're now 7-8. So staying competitive, and I think has been accredited to the defense. They were a pretty solid defense even when Josh McDaniels was still there, and we're seeing a team play harder with Max Crosby, Nate Hobbs, Divine Diablo, some of those guys with Antonio Pierce helping that a little bit. But getting back to Kansas City, I talk about the run game or the lack thereof, and when I'm looking at this, you play a team who has 6 total points, which were scored on offensive drives. This is why I was frustrated with how the Kansas City Chiefs handled the end of that Buffalo Bills game with the Kadarius Toney neutral zone infraction. That's why I was so frustrated, because it wasn't, okay, I know. A lot of the time, sometimes the referees will give you warnings. They will say, okay, am I on the line of scrimmage? Now, you got to check as the receiver as well, but you say, am I on or am I off? And they'll tell you, usually you're good. Back up a little bit, step up a little bit. These are the same things in which we talked about, but I said, forget all that. And the reason it wasn't important to me, I'm not going to use my lack of attention to detail to be an excuse. Now, you're looking at that and you're saying, okay, the referees, they didn't call the game consistently. Now, we looked at that game with Kadarius Toney. He lined up about 5 or 6 times in the neutral zone against the Buffalo Bills. But why did they not call it the entire game and call it in that last moment? I didn't look at it from that perspective. I'm saying, you're the receiver. We understand we're in the 4th quarter. We're down by 3 points. We know that it's now or never. I got to be on point. Andy Reid has to be on point. Patrick Mahomes has to be on point. Kadarius Toney, MVS, all of these guys, we have to be on point, and they weren't. And we're seeing that come back to bite them, because I said all season. Now, last year they won the Super Bowl. They were a top offense, all of these things, but this is not that same team, and they have some of the same personnel. But I think the biggest thing is that lack of attention to detail. This is not the most talented receiving core. Now, I love Rashee Rice. I love MVS. I love some of those guys. But I think when you pair that with the sloppiness and with the lack of execution, you're really going to struggle. Now, I want to bring this up because on their second offensive drive, talking about lack of attention to detail, Travis Kelce dropped a pass. This was a pass to the left side of the football field. He dropped it on the out route. Rashee Rice, the play after that, he gets a false start. Couple plays after that, Marquez Valdez-Scantling gets an offensive offsides. I think this drive right here, the second offensive drive, embodied a lot of things for the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce dropping a pass. He struggled with that a little bit this season. That doesn't discredit the Hall of Fame resume. He is the Hall of Famer that he is. But this season, we've seen that. Drop the pass. Rashee Rice gets a false start. MVS gets an offensive offsides. In one single drive, all of the miscues and all the things we talked about happen. Now, I think that when you have those fumbles that I really want to talk about, because you had the pick six, Jack Jones sat on the route, took it there, but then you had the fumble. And actually, I want to go back to this because it was after they scored a touchdown. Las Vegas punted. Then you had the fumble touchdown. Now, oh yeah, okay. So this was before this was before the pick six by Jack Jones. Now you got Isaiah Pacheco. They were mixing up a little bit, and I think that actually the touchdown before this, Isaiah Pacheco, kind of a wildcat formation. He gets the football. Patrick Mahomes comes around in the defense. Now we're thinking, okay, we're getting eye candy. Is he gonna fake it? Toss it back to Patrick Mahomes. They have some kind of tricky pass, but actually Isaiah Pacheco went around with it, faked it, continued to run. This was something we actually saw a couple weeks ago with DJ Moore. Seeing a lot of people use it, but in this game, I think the biggest thing for me is that now going back to it, especially in your own territory, they tried to, because Isaiah Pacheco was lined up as the quote-unquote quarterback. Patrick Mahomes was lined up beside him. They were in the gun, and they tried to exchange a handoff. They had a reverse coming behind it, but they mishandled the handoff. Isaiah Pacheco couldn't get it to Patrick Mahomes. You had the defensive tackle. He picked it up, stiff-armed somebody in the end zone. Then that actually made it 9-7. Then you had the pick six by Jack Jones, which made it 17-7. So those are the miscues I talk about. And then after that, now they go down, they drive down the football field after the pick six. They missed the field goal at the end of the half. And that was just a situation where I'm saying, okay, why? Why are we having these same types of problems, missing a field goal like that, having these offsides, having these penalties, dropping a pass here or there? The Kansas City Chiefs, especially from what I saw in this game, and it doesn't feel like, I'm not just trying to say they can't get it right. That's what's so frustrating, because we saw offense with a lot of the same personnel last season get it right. We saw the top offense. We saw the top scoring offense. We saw a team who won the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. What has gone wrong in this season? And I think for me, you look at different types of things, and it's little thing after little thing after little thing. Now we talk about it, either you're coaching or condoning it. Andy Reid. And a lot of people have said, and I've even seen this to an extent myself, the lack of Eric Bieniemy. What Eric Bieniemy meant to this team, he's a hard-nosed coach. He's an old-school coach. Can't play for Colorado. Different types of things he's done. He's a guy who's decorated when it comes to the game of football, coaching and playing. But they lack that now. And with Matt Nagy being over there, I'm just seeing a team that's not as focused. Now, like I said, after they missed the field goal, they proceeded to go downs, punts, downs, and then they scored the final touchdown where it didn't even matter anymore. Las Vegas Raiders got the football back, ran out the clock. So these are the types of things that I'm seeing. No team fears the Kansas City Chiefs right now. I'm looking at the Jack Jones pick six. It's no reason that he should be able to jump that. Why don't we have the speed to threaten him out on the outside? Why do we have those types of things happening? It's a fourth and medium. I'm looking at it. This was where they went downs in the first half. They're playing man coverage. We have no answers for Patrick Mahomes. Every single play that they make, it looks like it's out of structure. They can't just line up, motion, snap the ball, 1, 2, 3, come back to it. It can't be 1, 2, make the read, make the throw. It's not that, because it's just not working and it's not open. Now, I don't know if we want to point this to Andy Reid or do we want to point this to some of the personnel groupings. And I think for Andy Reid, he's had so many successful offenses. But in this game and in this season, really, we've seen a team that struggles to play within structure. Patrick Mahomes, he's excellent. He's the best quarterback in the game of football. Not playing like it right now, but I think he is when we talk about intangibles, body of work. And just he excels outside of the structure, but you can't always be outside of the structure. And I think when they won the Super Bowl last year, we saw a guy that got better in that aspect. You lose Tyreek Hill, and then you had Juju Smith-Schuster. You had MVS, Sky Moore. Some of those guys, you play more in structure with Travis Kelce, him being the leading receiver, but it's just not that this season. For the Las Vegas Raiders, I think it's a big-time win. You moved to 7-8, and I'm looking at some of those quarterback prospects, Michael Penix Jr., Jaden Daniels, some of these different types of guys. I think this is going to be a very good team, and I really hope that Antonio Pierce gets the shot. He's the first guy in the interview room that can be the head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they have a bright future with Antonio Pierce at the helm. A lot of great things that they did today. We saw Zamir White, no Josh Jacobs. We saw some of the receivers get involved. Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, of course. But overall, we're seeing a defense that's nasty with a defensive-minded head coach. Continue to do what you're doing. And I think that they probably don't have enough wins for Coach of the Year. But when we talk about great coaching jobs around the league, Antonio Pierce is in that conversation. Now, I want to get into the final game. The Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles outlasted the New York Giants 33-25 to end their 3-game losing streak. On the day, Jalen Hurts, 24-38, 301 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. DeAndre Swift, 20 carries, 92 yards, had a touchdown. The Eagles rushing game, This was a big time improvement for what we saw in these last few weeks. 35 carries, 170 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground in the totality. This is talking about Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, all of the backs, even Jalen Hurts adding in his scramble work. That's what they had on the ground. So a big time day. I thought they got back to their identity, except for one stretch of the game that we're going to talk about. Now, for the New York Giants, did some different things, but I thought they stayed competitive. Shout out to Brian Daboll for being able to rally this team a little bit, get back into the football game. You had a little bit of luck. Football spins your way a little bit, but I think for the most part, you had some guys making some big-time plays. I'm talking about Tyrod Taylor. I'm talking about Darius Slayton. And talking about Tyrod Taylor, the New York Giants benched Tommy DeVito. Now, he was 9 of 16 when he got benched, but he got benched at halftime after being down 20-3 going into halftime. And I thought when he was in the football game, they were overly dependent on Saquon Barkley. And when they were throwing the football, it was a lot of dink and dunks. It was a lot of underneath work. So just to add him, and also in a press game conference, Brian Daboll, he quoted, "I brought in Tyrod Taylor because I wanted to give the team a spark." And I think we actually did see that. Tyrod Taylor on the day, 7 of 16, 133 yards, a touchdown and an interception at the end of the game where he was just trying to make a play. But Tyrod Taylor's performance is highlighted by the catch of Darius Slayton. Now, it was his own coverage, and then actually Slayton was able to get matched up on Reed Blankenship in the back end. Big-time touchdown. I believe it was actually, I'm going to double-check this because I saw the game, and it was a 69-yard touchdown. So this was a huge, huge play by them. And then Saquon Barkley, like I said, really in the first half, had 23 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown. We saw a lot of work come from him early, but then we also saw Tyrod Taylor being able to extend some of those plays, scramble a little bit, get on the run, make some big-time throws. And I think for me, my biggest takeaway from this one is I believe for the most part, they got back to their brand of football. They did a lot of things they wanted to do. We saw motion on offense. We saw diversity within the run game, getting all of our weapons involved, using the design running game with Jalen Hurts. But I think in the end of the first half, at the late second quarter, and at the early second half and the beginning of the third quarter, we saw them get back to some of their woes, some of the things that make them a struggling football team, even with this plethora of talent. Now, talking about that play at the end of the first half, late second quarter, Jalen Hurts, he gets flushed out of the pocket. He runs the football with about 12 seconds left on the clock, and he has the opportunity to get out of bounds. Instead of getting out of bounds, having another crack at the end zone, he cuts back inside. And we saw it on the game film. He said, okay, that's on me. That's on me. I got to get out of bounds in that situation, but he didn't get out of bounds in that situation. And then now you got to rush back to the line of scrimmage, spike the football, let Jake Elliott take the kick, and he made the kick, but I think you just made that late game. Well, not even the late game. I think you just made that late half, late quarter management a lot harder than it was supposed to be. Those are the little things when we talk about attention to detail. That's something else you point to. And then actually I want to go to this as well, where we had the fumble. This is where Boston Scott ran into Olamide Zaccheaus on the kickoff return, fumbled the football. And then the New York Giants, they go down and score. So now they're feeling a little bit better about themselves. And then, of course, we had the Adoree Jackson pick 6. So these are the types of things I'm looking at where I say, in a situation like that, Dallas Goedert, he runs the out route, tries to get up to the sideline, stumbles, and then Adoree Jackson, he's sitting outside of that thing. He comes down, breaks on the football, picks it, and takes it to the house. I'm looking at those situations where I say, we got to stay with what was working. In the first half, you come up 20-3, and I think in the second half, the worst thing, I'm going to be honest, I feel like the worst thing that has happened to the Philadelphia Eagles is that brotherly shove, the tush push, whatever we want to call it. It seems to me, like I said, when you line up in the pistol, you line up in the gun, and you consistently run inside zone with no creativity. There's no motion, there's no zooms, there's no rocket, there's no lasers. It's nothing but lining up in the gun or the pistol, and we're sending DeAndre Swift up the middle. We're sending Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott even up the middle. Those types of things will not consistently win you football games, and I understand. You got Landon Dickerson, you got Lane Johnson, you got Jason Kelce, you got Jordan Mailata. I understand you have the offensive line. I understand DeAndre Swift is a top back, but when you consistently do that and the defense can key in on you, they can hone in on that and guess exactly what player are going to run, it's not going to work like it did last year. Now, it worked last year, but I think you added some creativity to it last year. We saw more RPOs. We saw more creativity within the offense, but this year, it seems like they're calling football games like they want to get in the third and short. They want to get in the fourth and short. Instead of saying, we want explosive plays, we want to get down the football field, but it's okay inside zone. Maybe a screen pass to Dallas Goedert or A.J. Brown. How many times did they call screen passes in this football game? The tush push and the brotherly shove, whatever we want to call it, has hurt the Philadelphia Eagles. You're calling the football game to get into these short yardage situations rather than calling the football game to actually get down the football field and go score. I understand you can get in the 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 4th and 2. I understand you can get into those situations and just run brotherly shove and succeed with it every time. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think calling the game like that's all you have, that has gotten you into some problems that you really don't want to get into. For the most part, the Philadelphia Eagles got a little bit back to their brand of football. It was a good win overall. I'm not going to take too much away from that. I just think it's those little things. That's just how I analyze the game. That's what I'm looking at, because when you get into playoff football, San Francisco again, Dallas, Detroit, those types of things will hurt you. If you have that swing like that and then you fumble the football, you let the New York Giants go down and score, then you get the pick 6 by Adoree Jackson, that simple stretch can win, or it can make or break you. It can win or lose you a football game, and I just don't think you'll be able to stomach that against more competitive and better and more talented football teams. So that's all I have to say. Getting into those situations, just being more consistent. Show us that football that we saw in the first half, and especially the first quarter, getting out on it early, using your weapons, being creative with the offense, and don't stall out like you did in the late second, and especially going into that second half to start it off. Letting Tyrod Taylor, even though he made some big-time plays, but you got to put your foot on the opponent's neck in a situation like that. For the New York Giants, I think it's simple. We're looking at a team who's looking at draft position right now, but still being competitive. I think they played an extremely good game for what it's worth in this situation. Now, we don't take moral victories, but we saw a football team that made it competitive for the most part. They rallied behind Brian Dable and a lot of the things that Wink Martindale tried to create and do defensively in this game. But just to wrap it up, I think all of these football games are good. I want to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. But that's going to do it for today. Biggest takeaways of each game on NFL Christmas. And now we